Welcome, welcome, your backup plan tribe, to another awesome live stream from us, your backup plan. My name is Tina Ginn, talking taboo with Tina. You've got right now, and if you are here, you have reached us. If you found us for a reason, and you should definitely listen to our show today and share it. I'm an emergency preparedness coach, a best-selling author of In the Blink of an Eye. Yes, that's how fast things happen, just like that. We'll get back to that in a minute. I'm an app developer of Your Backup Plan and a financial expert right here in Vancouver, BC, Canada. If we focus on real, raw conversations with our listeners about their journey from a life-changing event in their life. And what is your backup plan app anyways, Tina? That's what I get asked all the time. You know, back in the day, Little House on the Prairie, they used to take paper bag and roll up their paperwork, their documents, their home information, their property information, their personal information. And they used to tie it up really tight in a paper bag and shove it in the rafters and let everybody know where it was. Do we do that now? Do we do any of that now? Do we know where our stuff is? Do we know how to reach it? Do we know if your daughter came into the house or if your sister came into your home? Do they know where your stuff is? Is it all together in one place? Do you know what to put together? Probably no to all of those questions. And that's why I'm here, and that's why I help you get all of this stuff put together. Because your backup plan app puts your life all into one place in case of any unpredictable circumstance, while taking that painful aftermath out of that tragedy. So what does that mean? It means that one thing we can all count on. We're going to die. We're going to get sick. We're going to get injured. We're going to have that tragedy, that car accident, that C word, that heart attack. We're going to lose everything in a wildfire, a hurricane. We're going to lose everything in a war, apparently, as we are right now, today, in 2022. We are not Superman. We come onto this world, this 3D world with stuff, and we don't know what that stuff is, and we don't know how to create that stuff and put it all together so that we can pass it down to that next family member, that next love that we have, that we want to make sure that they'll be safe and secure after we're gone. Just like Mike Tyson says, his famous quote, everyone has a plan until we get punched in the mouth. And that's so true. And our guest today is going to tell us all about that. Avery, our show today is called Struggles with Sickness. How in 1 minute you have your life turned upside down. And she's the best one to tell us all about that. She's in the background of working with people all the time. And I'm so excited to bring her on the show today and tell you that she's going to give us some tips and tricks about how to avoid the ICU. Imagine that. I have to admit that it's a scary place, ICU. I think the hospital is a scary place for the majority of people. And perhaps Avery will be able to help us understand that a little bit better, of that medical world that we're talking about. So the Emerging Blueprint program is coming to you very soon. I promise. It's getting bigger and bigger. It's my baby. It's going to help you guys so very much. It's got interviews and videos about how to do things, why you should do things, what you should put together. It gives you templates and worksheets to print off, fill out for you and your family members, having those family conversations and understanding how your insurance works, understanding how the banks work, understanding things. And I think that's what I want to empower people with, is that we can understand how all of it works, and we can be better prepared for the unexpected, so that we don't have this problem of grief on top of what a mess I have to deal with right now. Nobody wants that, and I'm going to help you fix that. So if you have not liked, shared, or subscribed to our channel yet, please do. I get my hand out all the time and I can never find where that subscribe button is down here. Click on that bell, click on that subscribe button so that you get notified about our upcoming videos. I'd like to thank the United States and Canada for our biggest listeners. Germany, Ireland, and Italy are my next 3. I'd like to welcome my German listeners. Meine deutsche Freunde sind unserem Podcast willkommen. Wenn Sie Kommentare haben, können Sie gern Fragen stellen. Also danke für deine Freundschaft and danke fürs Erhören, meine deutsche Freunde. So thank you so very much, my German friends, for listening. And thank you, everyone. Thank you. We love to have you come back, and we love our new subscribers as well. Our special guest today is Avery Thatcher, and I'm going to bring her on and do a wonderful introduction. There she is.
Hi, Tina.
Hi, Avery. This is Avery Thatcher. It's called Struggles with Sickness. She has been an RN, and she is located in Canada in beautiful Calgary, Alberta. And I know you can probably talk about yourself a little bit better than I can. So, Avery, what were you, and how did you change and start this journey that you are now on?
Thank you. So I started my career as a registered nurse. I was working in the ICU not very long before I realized the majority of the reasons that adults found themselves in the ICU were because of illnesses and diseases linked to chronic stress. So concerns like strokes or heart attacks, lots of gastric upset, cancers, all of those things have strong links to stress. And so I knew that I didn't want to stay in that reactive side of medicine, and I wanted to get into the proactive side to help keep people out of the ICU in the first place. And so I started in 2015 learning and working to create a space for people that identified as being really high achieving, which a lot of us are all throughout the spectrum of our life, because you can't ever really change that if it's in your nature. So
That's for sure.
Right? Like I remember my uncle, when he retired, he started a business with another colleague of his, and they were busier than when he was working. They went into painting. So we, as high achievers, we keep that going the entire time, but we need to learn how to combat that to keep us out of the ICU, because nobody plans to end up in an ICU. And the impact on you as that person, as well as your family and loved ones that are around you in that experience, is huge. Stressful beyond measure for everybody.
Because you're taking 1 hour at a time.
Sometimes 1 minute at a time.
Yeah.
Depending on what you're there for and what we're working on, it can be really, really stressful for both you as that person and the people watching.
And probably the people sitting waiting.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
because
the people that can't come in. Mm-hmm.
You can't, there's nothing worse than not knowing that you have any control over the matter, and giving that to the universe, because that's so tough to sit and wait when you have no control over it.
Absolutely. And so that's where I see a lot of family members and loved ones latching onto the control that they have in that situation, because they really feel like somebody else is driving the bus and they're hanging onto the outside hoping for the best. So it's definitely a part of that picture to look at what you can control in that situation, but also making sure that you are not adding to your stress by focusing on certain things.
Right. And we do talk about in a lot of the shows about how, you know, you've seen all of these people come in and out in certain shapes and forms
Mhm.
into ICU.
Yes.
But we don't plan on it. No one plans on being there.
No.
And I have to say, we're not all given 5-minute evacuation notices
Mm-mm.
before that car hits us or before the pandemic when COVID all of a sudden overnight took us. Um, and I think we're still seeing that, whether or not it was a weekend accident of having fun down at the lake, or if it was a skiing trip, or we don't plan and
Mhm.
we're not prepared. And
No.
you see, we're not prepared from a whole different angle.
Agreed. There are so many times where the family is making those a very heavy and important decisions, and they're like, I don't know what they would want. I don't know. Help me. Like, how will I know what they want? And I'm like, this is why we need to have that conversation earlier. I When I was 27, I had an advanced care plan because I was like, having seen ICU conversations, I was like, I am not putting that on my family to worry about if they made the right decision for me. I'm going to have it laid out nice and clear. So that way, if they don't even want to read it, they can just hand it to the team and be like, this, this is what you wanted.
Yeah, exactly. So, what kind of problems did you see in there that you can talk about?
So I think, like I mentioned, like when people are at the end of their life and they have the option, the family has the option to either allow this person to die with dignity there in the ICU or to move that person into a care home with whatever degree of care they may end up needing if we continue to prolong their life. And so a lot of people that I've met, like when they come back after their loved one has passed on in another long-term care home, a lot of people say, if I had known that this would be what their quality of life was, I wouldn't have said yes. I would have asked you to pull the plug. So I think knowing more and in a like a cognitive, really quiet, objective space to be able to know what the probable outcomes are for certain things is really important because then you know what to expect. Because in the heat of the moment, it's not the time for you to be able to think that clearly. Because when we're in that space of high stress, we actually lose access to our prefrontal cortex, our higher level thinking brain. So we have to make sure that we're coming in with a plan beforehand. And other situations that I saw were for like organ and tissue donation.
Yeah.
It's a very controversial topic. There's lots of people that are 100% for it and 100% against it. Absolutely, there's like some gray area in there, but a lot of people, if it's not written down and it's not clearly communicated to their family or a decision maker has not been appointed,
Yeah.
then you have this debate happening and tension happening between people that are going through the worst days of their life. And that's not at all what we want for our loved ones.
Well, especially when there's more than one person involved, because then they have an idea and the other person has their idea, and
Mhm.
it doesn't always go very friendly together.
Agreed. Agreed. And so in my own family, I've told both my parents that you need to appoint a decision maker, like I can't remember what the term is, which is so bad. It just totally slipped my brain. But the decision maker for health related things, because I know that my opinion is vastly different than my brother's and then my one sister. So like it will create a lot of dissent if they don't have it clearly stated before because then it's
Right.
just removes the argument because you're just
Right.
like we have
That's what
different
you wanted.
opinions but this is what they wanted.
Right.
So having that conversation early is so vital, so vital.
And we talk about that in our show about how we have fun doing that type of thing too. It doesn't have to be miserable. It doesn't have to be a discussion that we dread. It can be fun. And I know in our workshops we have fun. We make a game of it and we sit down and you can choose maybe every year before December 1st, before Christmas holidays. You get together and have some wine and some coffee and some appies or tea and drinks, and you get your worksheets out and you fill them out and you talk about it and you laugh about it, and then everybody knows, right? It's
Mhm.
all good. So I think that would make the family become closer. That's my goal, is for them to not have these arguments. And I do talk about people when stress hits, when you hear the C, like you could go into your doctor tomorrow and have a normal conversation about what problems you have. But as soon as that doctor says you have the C word or you've had other issues of a disease, your brain disappears.
Mhm.
It's like being hit by a car. Where your brain goes, I have no idea. But I always talk about it that it's almost like you can literally see it go out of your head, your logic brain, and you're trying to like grab it because it's gone from your head.
Mhm. Exactly. And that's how the stress response works. Because when we get triggered, when our stress response kicks in, it was designed to help us run away from a bear, get to safety, and turn off. So when you're running away from a bear, contemplating your advanced care plan, solving a tricky problem at home, figuring out how to fix your furnace, not a priority. You're just like, hey, which tree do I climb? How fast do I need to climb it? So it's really just about the survival space. So when we're triggered, is a family member that is watching another loved one in the ICU,
Yeah.
we have to learn how to turn that stress switch off so that we can re-access that brain, because our body will send blood to where it matters. When we're stressed, it sends blood to our big muscles to help us fight or flight, whereas it does not send as much blood to that thinking part of our brain. So it actually kind of shuts off.
That's kind of funny, isn't it, really? When you
So
think about it.
frustrating sometimes, though. Because, like, our body was not designed for modern day stress, but in modern day stress, we need access to that part of our brain.
Yeah. And I find that we might even say things that we don't mean
Yes,
because we're
absolutely.
not thinking
Mhm.
properly,
Yes.
which causes more anguish and problems around the family at that
Mhm.
moment of that tragedy.
Agreed. Agreed.
So, what other things did you see that people were not prepared or that you had issues about?
I think mainly when people aren't previously aware of the kind of caregiver that each person is and how they handle stress. So I think that's also an important conversation to have early, because, so for example, I remember this one family where one of the children of this elderly man that was dying, one of the children was very much a caregiver. So she was like bringing food for everybody and like wanting to hug everybody. And then this other person was very much a flight response. So they struggled to be present while they were there. They really didn't want to stick around. They didn't want to touch anybody. They didn't want to hug. They just needed to be in their own space. And so these two people really had a lot of friction between them because they couldn't become aware of how each of them was processing that experience. So I think creating conversation around that early can also be really helpful, because then you could say, hey, I'm processing this. I need to have time to myself. I understand that you really want to hug right now, but I'll let you know when I'm ready. And then whenever you feel like you can. But it just opens up that conversation.
Right. I never understand the people that don't need hugs because I'm a hugger. So,
Oh, that's so funny. So I'm a hugger in every scenario except for when I'm stressed. And then I'm very much like,
oh, and then you back off and
mm, yeah,
oh,
which is
I'm a
tricky for
hugger
my husband.
100% of the time.
Oh, yes, my husband is too, which is why we have that conversation, him and I. I'll let you know.
That's cute. Isn't that funny how somebody might be a little different, especially during that tragedy time of moment, right?
Mhm, we all process things differently, and so learning how to hold space for that is really important.
Now, did you get involved with people trying to keep them positive and for the outcome? Was that difficult?
Uh, so it's definitely a fine line because you don't want to give people false hope, but you also don't want to shut people's hope down, especially the person that's lying there in that hospital bed. You want to be able to give people reasonable expectation of hope without taking it too far. And so that's something which I think becomes the art of nursing when you learn how to walk that line and bring people around it. But the positivity where they're like, oh, it's going to be fine. Like just it'll be fine. You'll pull through this. It's really tricky to manage because, again, you don't want to crush their dream of seeing their loved one get up and walk out of there. But it's
Yeah.
still just being very objective. And no ICU nurse will ever tell you, oh, it's going to be fine. No one will say that because you just don't know.
No. Did you see miracles?
Absolutely. Yes. There was one case where this patient, we had been doing CPR for a while. All of the monitors and things were saying that he had passed on. And so then the physician standing at the end started to pronounce the time of death. And this person reached out and grabbed one of the staff's hands that was standing there because they were like, I'm not dead. Don't let me go. And everybody screamed and we kept going. And they survived. They survived and they moved on to the rest of the hospital for their rehab. There's been other cases where people, we were sure and we're preparing the family, and all of a sudden, 2 days later, they just wake up. And you're like, well, isn't that
Hello.
wonderful? Yes.
You're back.
You're back. The problem is, though, that some of those stories, people that haven't prepared for this kind of situation, they then hold on to that. Well, my loved one will also be that miracle. So I think, like you've been talking about this whole time, preparing yourself for those difficult conversations, hoping for the miracle, but not expecting it.
Right. I think that's important, but we all get stuck up in our own wishes, in our thoughts, right? So it makes it hard to come to reality.
And sometimes I see miracles as not necessarily that person getting saved, but as when family that has been estranged comes back together, when you get a little bit of time with that person to actually say goodbye and to say what you needed to say before they go. Those can be miracles in themselves. So it's not always that the miracle needs to be that they survive, but maybe it's that they hold on for 2 more days so that their daughter can come.
Yeah. Right. What about people that are fighting? Did you see that too? Beside the bed, arguing, and
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Yeah, there's a lot. And I think
which
it's
I
just 'cause
don't
they're
understand, but
stressed. Yeah. I think it's people just don't always know how to process such big emotions. And it depends on what else you have going on in those times as well. And that's where a lot of compassion for yourself and compassion for that other person, and then being able to set boundaries to even just say, what you just said has triggered me. So I need to take a break from this conversation. I'm going to walk away. Please don't follow for right now. I'll let you know when I'm ready to talk again. So it's about being able to have those more objective boundaries.
yeah, we don't think of setting those boundaries when we're in
No.
that deep discussion.
No. And so sometimes the ICU staff can help you with that, to be like, I can see that you're getting really angry right now. Do you think you need to take a break? But the thing is, we can't be present for every single interaction. So thinking about those kinds of things ahead of time is really important too. And that's kind of ties back into what we mentioned before with knowing how each person in that dynamic responds to stress. So that way you can kind of prepare for the fact that, like, for example, one of my sisters is a flapper. She'll very like, oh, when things get really stressed. And so I know.
Literally like that?
Absolutely. Like she'll
Oh,
just
really?
stand and flap. And so I know that in those stressful situations, I can't have an objective conversation with her until she's finished flapping and she's able to get that out. And it's actually a somatic response.
I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah. So humans are actually the only animal that does not process their stress and trauma somatically. If you were to look at on the Serengeti, if a like antelope just narrowly escapes being eaten by a lion, it stands there and it shakes. Like it shakes quite violently. And that's a trauma processing response. So people that stand there and like have to bounce their knee, or if they like flap their hands or whatever, that's a somatic release of those stress hormones. It's actually very healthy, and more of us should be doing that. But for her, I know that she has to flap it out and then we can chat.
But she actually does that with her hands.
Yep. Like,
Oh,
mhm.
right to your face. Does it make her
Oh,
cool
her
down like?
face. Yeah, her face.
Yeah.
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 I don't know if it's so much a cool down thing or if it's just a movement thing, but it definitely
Oh,
works.
well, I do the leg shaking.
Mm, yes.
When I was having my first daughter, um, I had people come in thinking that I had already had her, for them to visit. And then I'm still in labor,
Ooh.
12 hours later.
Mhm,
But yeah, they couldn't get over how I shook. And it's just one leg, but it takes my mind off of the pain. That's
mhm.
what I do it for.
Yes. And so it sounds like it's sort of a subconscious somatic release for you. We can use movement to process and release stored up chemicals in our body. And those chemicals can be pain related, they can be stress related, emotional. And it's just a way to help us release that if we're not able to in that moment, like do the emotional processing through our logical brain.
Right. Oh, cool. I didn't know that was a thing either. I just thought I did it and I didn't know why I did it.
Well, keep doing it. It's good for you. It's a way to process stress, and it actually helps your body heal from it so that you don't have some of those prolonged negative health effects of stress. So it's a great thing to do.
Yeah, I didn't know it was for that purpose. I just thought when I do it automatically, my brain goes to the part that's moving. So it
Yes.
takes my brain off the pain
Oh, I
part
love that.
and concentrates on the moving the leg, I guess. I don't know.
Mhm,
That's what
mhm.
I always thought anyway, but who
Yeah.
knows? But um, I know you have the inside look, and I wish we could take a camera or could have taken a camera around on your forehead when you see some of these cases of people. Do you think people lying in ICU can hear everything?
I do. I always treat people like they can, because there's a lot of research that shows that people have very vivid memories and very specific memories from being in the ICU, even when they're fully sedated. And by all accounts, our machines are telling us that they're unconscious. So I think it's really important to still talk to your loved one in the ICU, still hold their hand, rub their arm, be there, because people do have really strong memories.
And touch, I guess, too, right?
Yes.
Touch and hearing.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the touch is just so important, because when you have your loved one sitting there in the ICU with all of these machines and things beeping, and maybe they're on a ventilator and that's also making lots of noise, and then
It's
anything else,
scary.
it's scary. And so then it's easy to sit there with your hands like tight to you, but really you're going to feel better if you're holding their hand. And believe me, we as the ICU staff will let you know if we need to be where you are. So you go ahead and do it, and we'll let you know.
And push you around. Push you over.
You may say it nicely to start with, but if you're not getting away fast enough, we'll shove your chair. Just kidding. Not really.
Shove you a little bit over. um, what kinds of things did you ever have to um, we don't expect any of these things.
Mhm.
And I know that when they put you under in a coma, it's different than if you are in a coma
Mhm.
yourself, right?
Yes.
Um, but what is it like after they come out of that? Is it for the family that's around? How is that?
So most of the time it's very celebratory, because it means that we've won, that we're starting to bring them back into whatever their new normal is going to be. And I think making sure that you as the family are patient, because just because their breathing tubes come out, some of the medications have come off, maybe they've lost a couple of machines in the room, it doesn't mean that they are going to be just like they were before they got put into that coma. So having lots of patience is really important in there, because they, as the patient, will be far more frustrated than you can even imagine. People recovering from things like strokes or heart attacks or accidents, it's hard when the last time you were awake, you knew what you were capable of, and now even opening a toothpaste container requires 3 minutes of time.
Yeah, we don't have that patience.
No, no. And so it's just having the family also prepared for that is really important, because then you're not like, oh, here, let me do it for you, because they need to do it still. But it's
Right.
just to like stand there and hold space while it takes them 3 minutes to open their toothpaste.
Right. What about coming through that coma induced? They say that they have a lot of horrible memories from a coma induced.
So it depends. And it also depends on the medications. So some of the medications that are used, it depends on the medication. So some of the medications that are used can definitely increase the amount of hallucinations that you can experience. And it depends. There's some research that shows that it depends on the mindset that you were in when you went under.
Oh,
So, what some ICUs do, and what I always did in my practice, is I would talk to them and say, like, what's your favorite childhood memory? What was your favorite vacation? And get them to be thinking about that while we give them some of these medications that are known to produce some pretty wacky dreams. And then at least they're in a positive headspace with those happy chemicals floating around, a little bit extra
right.
dopamine in there just to help it out. But really, very much depends on the person. But the other thing too is depends on how long you've had to be in that coma. With the way that science has gone, people often in the ICU are not in a coma for longer than a day or two, depending on the condition, because we see a lot of benefit in waking people up earlier, even if you still need to be on the breathing machines and maybe a heart lung machine or other machines. We just get a big team with you and we walk you down the hallway anyway. So you can still get up and move and have that piece. And that really does help cut down on the bad memories.
Oh, nice. Um, is there such a thing where they're under for a month or more?
Very rarely. It's typically not too much longer than a week or two at the
Usually
most.
at the
Yes.
maximum.
Yeah, at the most. Certain things like with the C word, those can go longer, depending on so many factors. But in general, sort of that length of time.
And not induced comas, they could last longer because you
Yes.
have do you have less control of those as a medical staff?
Yes. If you are in a coma that is physiologically induced, so done by your body, we can do tests and see if we can help support the reason why that's happened, but it's really on your timeline after that.
And how long can those last?
Years. It can be a couple of days to a couple of years or longer.
So, because I do what I do, how does that influence when you don't know when the person's going to go home? Like, how do they pay their bills? Like, nobody's knows that they're in a hospital in a coma. The bank doesn't care, and your mortgage company doesn't care.
So then it falls a lot to the family to be able to communicate that over. And that's where having something like the backup plan app can be so important, because then your family's not rummaging through your files in your house trying to find, okay, so like, where are they at with their mortgage? What account is that coming out of?
Yeah.
And also, do they have pets? Do those pets need to be fed? Or when was the last time somebody was there? So really, it definitely falls to the family for that. And so
And
it,
how do you get in? Like, does somebody have a key?
yes. And we need to think about all those things ahead of time. And that's what nobody thinks about.
No, because we don't think anything's going to happen,
Mm-hmm. Yes,
unfortunately. But like I say, shit happens.
sure does.
Yeah. And I don't think if you asked any of those families, they would ever say that they expected it.
No, no. It's very, very rare that people expect an ICU visit. And I think so. In my first day on an ICU, years ago, over a
Yeah.
decade ago, the one person that was training me, she's like, "You always start your day thinking about the worst case scenario, and then
Oh,
you
isn't that
plan for it.
interesting?
Because if you plan for it and you got like your medications ready and you got your plan ready and you know who you're going to call, if and when it happens, you're not like, oh my gosh. You're just like, hey, had this prepared. Let's do this. Let's do this. Calling this person. So I think that mentality is absolutely spilled out into other corners of my life, because
Yeah.
if you just plan, like, okay, so worst case scenario is after this call, I go out to walk my dog and I get hit by a car. Okay. My phone has on my home screen who to call, and my husband has all the information that he needs to make decisions. So I don't have to
We're
worry about
good.
it anymore.
Yeah. Well, and it's not necessarily just you. It's your husband that worries about everything,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Agreed. Yeah.
Because you're left holding the bag, so to speak.
Yes.
We had a case where a husband and the baby, I think she was a year and a half old or two, very small, and they were standing on the sidewalk and they were getting ready to walk across the street on the light, but they hadn't moved yet, and a car came through and hit them, and they hadn't even started walking across yet.
Mm-hmm.
He survived, but the baby didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And so, even in those cases, how difficult is it looking after such small children in ICU with the family? You know, miscarriages or deaths or.
Yeah. So I worked in a pediatric ICU also for about 5 years. And I think it's very different when it's children,
Mm-hmm.
especially because parents don't expect to outlive their children. So it's very hard to be prepared for something like that, because I think with adults, we process it differently. But I think still preparing for how you're going to support one another is really important in that scenario. Also, understanding, like we talked about, with the stress responses and how you're going to respond to that. But really, I think, especially when it comes to children, practicing compassion for both yourself and other people is the most important thing you can do. And we, over the course of our life, have had compassion really trained out of us. We're great at being compassionate to other people, but not to ourselves. And so I think working in some techniques to really train yourself to be compassionate to yourself again ahead of time will make really challenging situations like that easier. The upside is that children bounce back so much more than adults do, because children don't know that this is as significant as it is. I remember having so many patients in the children's ICU that if that injury had happened in an adult, we would be having the end of life conversation. But for kids, we're like, let's wait and see. And then a week later, they're up and walking around. And you're like, wow, look at
That's
that.
amazing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kids are so resilient. They'll be there with like all kinds of machines and tubes and things and whatever. And they'll be like, can I still go to bingo? And you're like, sure. Like, we'll figure it out. Bringing like 9 people, 9 nurses with you so you can go to bingo. But yes. Whereas an adult would be like, so it's just, yeah, kids bounce back differently for sure.
Oh, that's kind of a positive feeling in the ICU then,
Mm-hmm.
but it must be very sad all at the same time with what some of the parents have to go through.
Absolutely. And that's where my passion is really working on advocacy and prevention, because even for children, there's a lot that can be done to prevent them from needing an ICU. More older children than younger children for those cases. But yes, it's just, you have to be okay to hold space for people to be how they need to be in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's well, it's like a rock hit you on the top of the head. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
boing. Your life is now different.
Yes. Yes.
What about you as a nurse in the environment of doing what you're doing now to where it's brought you? What made you go that route?
So really a lot of it was that I wanted to prevent people from needing to be in the ICU in the first place because I just saw the impact on the person and the families and everything else. And so I was working on setting that up and being able to transition to it. And I wanted to do that on my own time, but my body had other ideas. So at the end of 2018, I remember I was coming off a night shift. It was Christmas morning, I was coming off the night shift, and the charge nurse looked at me and they're just like, "Oh, you do not look well. Go home and sleep. I'll mark you down as sick tonight. Feel better." And I went home and I slept for 20 hours. And I did
How
that the
did you
next.
feel? Like you were just feeling tired, or were
Yeah,
you
I just
feeling
felt
kind of
really tired and kind of like I was just run down and had the flu. And then when I went home, my dark circles were like down to here. It was the most epic dark circle I've ever had. So I, yeah, slept for 20 hours a day for the next couple of days, went to a family doctor, and they're just like, "What's that on your neck?" And I was like, "What?" And I had grown a 4.5 centimeter mass on my thyroid in about 3 months. And so went through a lot of tests for that to see if it was cancer, had it removed because it was still growing and needed it out. And then the problem is once that was removed, a lot of my symptoms didn't go away. I was still incredibly fatigued. I always felt like I had the flu. I had rotating pain between joints. It was very difficult for me to be active. And by active, I mean sitting up, not fully supported on a couch. So eventually I was given my own diagnosis, and
yeah.
I now have a chronic illness and disability. And it just really, even though at the moment I really wanted to make the decision to work full time in this business, but it made it for me, and I haven't looked back since. It's been such a beautiful journey, and it's just really forced me to look at my own stress and then also really live in my purpose, which has been
Hmm.
so fun.
I heard a lot of the autoimmune diseases are causes of your lifestyle.
Yes. So the science of epigenetics is really coming out, and there's more and more digging into it. But we saw a lot of, especially in the children's ICU, a lot of people developing type 1 diabetes, which is its own form of an autoimmune disease, being triggered by stress, like a viral illness, a stressful event at home, divorce of the parents. It would trigger something like that. And
Yeah.
so, absolutely, I did work in a very high stress environment, and I had these genes and this propensity to develop this illness. And I think that the situation that I was working in at the time definitely created the right circumstances for that to be triggered.
Right. Um, what do you think you would be able to help people with then now that you've shifted you helping people in that format?
So I think because the way that I teach is so much more accessible than it is when you're at the bedside with me in an ICU. That's not really the time to work on focusing on changing habits or lifestyle or anything like that. So, this allows me to get in front of that a lot. It also allows me to speak to it from a very unique perspective because I'm not a health coach that has never seen someone go through the ICU. So it just adds a little bit of a layer to that. But then also, um, it's, I thought that nursing was my calling. Now I
Mhm.
understand that this was it. It's definitely what I was meant to do. It's the biggest impact that I could have on people.
It's almost what I want to say that just came to my mind. It's almost like a physiotherapist for your health, kind of. That's what I'm kind of feeling.
It's kind of how I feel. I'm so glad you said that because I do kind of feel like a physiotherapist for your nervous system. I show you how to train it, how to strengthen it, and how to be able to relax that part of you when you need to let it go.
It's so hard. We have so many stresses in life, work, home, life, hobbies, or lack of, or the pandemic.
Mhm. Yes.
Um, a lot of these things are even after the fact of the lingering COVID,
Mhm.
that has caused people with a lot of issues after as well.
Mhm.
And it's just stress from work. I think it's, I know they had stresses back in farms and, that type of lifestyle when we had horses and no cars. But I think it's just so stressful now because it, it's just so different. Life is so
Mhm.
different.
It's a very fast forward world that we've created. And then having like, I remember growing up and teachers telling us, like, "You need to learn how to do math. You're never gonna have a calculator in your pocket." And, like, now I have a calculator, a phone book, a portable movie theater, and all of the different things in my pocket. So, I think the lifestyle that we're going through has just created more convenience. And so when you look back at the Mad Men generation, they smoked more, they drank more, but they walked more places. They rode their bikes more places. They were more active. And so the more convenient and fast forward our life has gotten, the more sedentary we become. And so that has all kinds of health implications, but also in a stress space because we're not able to allow our body to help process that stress, like with the leg shaking or the hand flapping. We don't move enough to allow those chemicals to kind of work their way through.
Yeah. Did what do you want to describe your program a little bit more for people? And all the information is down in the description box as well for
Sure.
our listeners.
Thank you. So, I provide stress relieving and nervous system regulating activities in small pieces because I know that we are all very busy, very, very busy people. And so that means you don't necessarily have 90 minutes to sit down for a yoga class. And so I do 15-minute yoga classes. We do 1 to 5 minute meditations. We do breathwork exercises. There's little mindset exercises you can do that are very quick that you can do on your phone. So it's little bits that you can work at over time to be able to really help your nervous system heal so that way you can stay out of the ICU. That's the goal.
What about people at the job? I know there's less of it right now because we have all shifted to work at home, a lot of people. But still, you sit at that desk hours upon hours working. So do you give them little exercises to do sitting as well?
Yes, absolutely. And there are very few jobs that you are actually glued to that chair, unable to stand up. So I talk about creating movement habits into your day that are literally 30 seconds or 2 minutes where you, in your spot, even in your cubicle, if you're not supposed to leave, just to be able to move into that space. Because sometimes in the ICU, it's very slow for the nurse that's sitting there. Because if everybody's calm, I've got everything all organized, my patient is stable, I basically sit there and watch you. And that means that I can stay with my bum glued in a chair for a very long time. So I was definitely unique in this, and people would always look at me a little weird whenever I started at a new ICU, but I would get up and stretch. So I'd be standing there stretching, I'd do a little yoga at your bedside, and because why not?
Yeah.
I'm supporting my health and demonstrating that. And then some ICUs that I worked in, it actually started a bit of a movement. So then all the way down the line, the other nurses would be like, oh, it's yoga time. So who knows what you'd create if you just got that started?
Absolutely. Did you see people that don't have any family? How's
Yes.
that to look after them?
So it's harder for sure. You just feel for them. But I always promised myself that I would never have anybody feel like they were alone. So for those cases where there was nobody coming to visit, then I would just move my computer inside the room and we would just sit and I would chat, share about my day, make sure that they felt comfortable. But there's so many circumstances to somebody being there alone, and it's not up to me to judge. It's just for me to be there for them. No
Yeah.
human needs to be alone in that situation.
Yeah, when I went to a lot of long-term care homes, I would see a lot of people that don't get visitors.
Mhm.
And it's tough. They might have family, but it's also tough on the family.
Yes, exactly. And that's where, like, non-judgment is so important
Yeah.
because you don't know, does their only local family member have 4 children, is a single parent, is working 3 jobs? You don't know.
No.
So, just always do your best in that moment because that's all you can ask for.
Yeah. But it just makes things more and more complicated for you guys.
Mhm.
Do you have to make decisions for the family? And that must be so hard. I used to hear that from my clients who are nurses and say it's not fair that we have to make these decisions.
Yes, and so it depends on the hospital that you work at and the different protocols that they have. Generally, in the hospitals here in Canada, in the bigger hospitals anyway, they have an ethics board that makes those decisions. So you can be on that ethics board and you do advocate for your patient, but in general, that decision is made more by a committee. So that way it doesn't fall to one single person to do. Smaller, more rural hospitals, absolutely it falls to
Have
that
to make
ICU
those
staff.
decisions.
Yeah. And so if you can travel with your advanced care plan, just have it in your wallet, have it in your purse, have it in your back pocket. We always bring it with us just so that if for some reason, again, I'm out walking the dog and I get hit by a car, when the emergency responder team picks me up, they can find it. It'll just be right there.
Yeah. And of course, it could be in your backup plan app if your
Mhm.
family members, are given that opportunity
Yes.
to look it up. It would be helpful, of course, at that
Mhm.
point.
Yes, agreed.
Um, is there anything that you'd like to talk about with the listeners about your final message? I
I
hate to finish. I have so many more questions to give you.
This has been a great conversation, so I hear you. So I think the thing which I just like to leave with you is that please have the conversation with your family before you think you need it. Even talking to your adult children or even teens that are 16 or above and you feel like it's ready for the conversation, it's just so important to know ahead of time. And it just takes that bit off of your mind. So if you can reach out to Tina and maybe go through one of her workshops that walks you through it, if you still have other questions, then reach out to a healthcare provider that's on your team because all of them, even if they can't have that conversation with you, they should be able to direct you to somebody that can. It's
Yes.
just really important to understand what your options are before you need them.
Yes. Nobody likes to be given one option
No,
in the
exactly.
end.
Yes,
Like,
there are
this is
so
it.
many
I guess
choices.
I'm dying,
Yes.
kind of thing versus, okay, you can do this or you can do that or you can do that. And how's that going to look? And there's so many decisions to be made at the moment, right? So we don't need that other crap to worry about it as well. Like
Mhm.
I
Yes.
I I just hated seeing my clients and the family members sitting around a bedside arguing with each other that
Mhm.
he wanted this, no, he wanted that, and I think he wanted this because of this, and well, you're wrong, and it's just
Mhm.
there's no need for it.
Absolutely. There's so much precious time in that experience, so you wanna make sure that you have the right memories associated with it. So,
Yes,
yeah, having that conversation earlier helps.
because I always say you can't get that time back.
Mm-mm. No.
And your brain goes to regret. It's the weirdest thing after. Like, I wish I would have taken more time. I wish I would have told them I love them. I wish.
Mhm.
That's it's like I don't know why your head does that, but it does. Even though you might have been the greatest person, that you did wish them love and support, but you
Mhm.
always think you could have done more.
Yes, always.
So that must have been painful for working as a nurse too, because I know you guys are there to help people. It's in your genetics.
Mhm. I think so.
And so it must really hurt, you're because they're people and you're there for a purpose.
I think it can hurt for sure. I think most of us and at least the colleagues that I've spoken with about this, we all develop compartmentalization in it. So we're able to really access that non-judgmental, that space to hold for other people and just to notice, like, you are fighting. I wish you wouldn't, but here, let me see what I can do to get you to that realization as well. Because if we internalize too much, our career won't last very long.
No, no, because you see so much
Mm-hmm.
and you
And
feel so much.
absolutely. And I am not afraid of crying. I have been bawling my eyes out, ugly crying with all the Kleenex on my way to my car after a shift often. And it's a healthy way for me to let go of that emotion. So I
Yeah.
think even you as a family member that may be listening to this, or a person that's worried about going into the ICU, it's okay to have the big emotions. Let them out. The vulnerability that you share in these moments is so important and so valuable for everybody. So definitely don't be afraid to let it out.
Oh, I like that. I hope everybody got that one. That's a
Mm.
great tip. I'm probably the best crier ever out there.
I knew you were my person. Yes. I can
The-
cry at the thought of a lyric of a song. It's just,
oh,
oh.
I just have to walk through there and I don't even have to know the person and I'm right there crying with them.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a switch I can turn on and off like I think I would like to. I would love to be able to do that. Um, so I'm still working on that part. But thank you so much, Avery. I would love to have you come back again and talk about it some more. I don't think we talk about it enough.
I agree. I think we're all so scared of this thing, but we all are going to die. It's just the truth. And so the more we talk about it, the less scary it's going to be. Truly. So, yes.
Well, and I always like to think that it might help you if you're a bit better prepared, even if you ended up in ICU and you did have something wrong but you came out as a miracle in the end and you can move on with a different perspective about life.
Mhm.
I
And
think it
just a quick
really. Yeah,
sorry.
go ahead.
Just a quick note on that. Um, One of the most impactful things that I feel like I could do as an ICU nurse was to explain to the person dying what to expect and to explain to the family what to expect. Because then there's not this fear of like, oh, is it going to hurt? What's it going to feel like? What is my family going to see? What's it going to look like? You just like walk them through and you're like, this will happen, then this will happen. I'll do this for you. You'll expect this. And it just, you can see the peace settle in to everybody in the room when they
Yeah,
know what to expect.
yeah. I think that's very, very nice and so much needed. I think that's what happens when you go into hospice
Mhm.
is that you are better guided, the
Yes.
family, to what to expect.
Mhm. It
I
just
think
makes sense.
that's why hospices have their place.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Thank you, Avery. Thank you so much for all your tips, your inside knowledge of what it's like to stand at the bedside of somebody and whether they're recovering or not recovering. So thank you. Thank you for all of your service and your continued guidance. Like I think a lot of people can use your services, that's for sure.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Tina. I'm so passionate about this topic, and I love that you've created a space for this. And I am going to go tell everybody which I know about the backup plan app because it is an invaluable thing to have. So,
Well,
yes.
it is, especially for people like you that's seen it. Like, I
Mhm.
just wish I could take a camera on top of their forehead and show people what it's like. And I actually, in my insurance world that I started doing back almost 20 years ago, I'd had my boss from Sun Life Financial come to me about, I guess it was about 10 months in to me being in the insurance world. And everybody thinks of it as selling, you know. You just have to
Mhm.
sell them some insurance and you make money. But I took it to a different angle. Like, I went down to the cancer clinic and I spent a week down there, talking to people and talking to families and seeing what their visits were like, and and it just opened my eyes wide open to why people need it, not because you're trying to sell them something, but because you need it,
Mhm. Yes.
and the implications. So, yeah, thank you for sharing all of that. It's very, very, very helpful for people to understand what happens. People don't understand what happens.
Mhm. Yes.
So thank you. And thank you for the scientific approach to my brain leaving my head and trying to capture it in the air.
Oh, you're welcome.
That's Tina's perspective of it.
It's so true though. It just yeah, it feels like it's left your body for sure.
It does.
Mhm.
It really does. It's like, I want it back, but you don't know, like, you're literally looking around like, how do I get this logic brain back in my head?
Mhm.
It
Yes.
sounds so weird, but believe me, for anybody that's experienced it, it's true.
Yes. I agree.
So thank you. So thank you very much, Avery, for coming on our show today. I want to thank you so very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And to our listeners out there, don't forget to push on that subscribe button and click on that bell so you get notified. And it helps us and our channel to get our word out there and share with people and share it with friends and family as well. Make sure, if you are thinking about that special someone right now in your mind, because I know you are, and you haven't told them how much you love and care about them today, make sure you pick up that phone, go around and see them, Zoom them, FaceTime them, whatever it takes. Call them. We still have phones. And tell them how much you love and care about them, because you don't know what tomorrow might bring.
Mhm.
And stay tuned for our podcast and our live streams. We have great conversations with some of the most interesting and accomplished people in the world today, like our wonderful guest, Avery, today. I think you'll be informed and you'll definitely be entertained. And we've inspired and motivated you so that you can have your own unique plan, and you start having these discussions with your family and friends, and to make it easier, and to appreciate that when you are in ICU one day, that you'll have a different perspective because you have a plan. So thank you again to all our listeners. We are everywhere on our show. We are on YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook. And we do have a Facebook group, a VIP group, where you can share your stories, you can ask questions, or you can respond to other people's questions as well. We're like-minded people that have issues, maybe with our family, estate planning, financial planning, and we're there for each other, and it's a great, great community. So thank you for sharing our show today. Thank you for listening. And I always end with Carol Burnett, and I'm sure Avery knows who Carol Burnett is. Even though you're younger, I know you know who Carol Burnett is. I'm so glad we had this time together just to have a laugh or sing a song. Seems we just get started, and before you know it, comes a time we have to say so long. So long, everybody. Stay safe, be kind. Thank you for listening. And Avery, if you'd like to say goodbye.
Thank you so much, Tina. It's been an honor. And if anybody has any questions about this, you can put it down below and I'll be checking the comments as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Avery. And I think I have your website on there down in the description box. So you can reach out to Avery if you have any questions. Feel free. She's there. Expect the unexpected. Stay safe. Be kind, everybody. Till next time. Bye.